Welcome to the Football Film Room Show. I'm Nick Kehoe. We've got another great episode for you today. We're going to talk about the Buffalo Bills and the way they need to play the rest of the year to finally get over the hump in the AFC. We're going to talk about an absolutely huge game between the Packers and Broncos, potentially a Super Bowl preview. We'll talk about the Texans defense and what they did to all but end the Chiefs season. We'll touch on the Steelers passing game finally rising from the ashes. But before we do any of that, I want to go back to 1982 and the Washington Redskins. Now, this was Joe Gibbs' second year as the Redskins head coach. The year before, they had gone 8-8 and missed out on the playoffs. And 1982, if you remember, was a strike-shortened season. So every team played just 9 games. The Redskins, for their part, they went 8-1. They had the best record in the NFL. But entering the playoffs, there was a lot of uncertainty about them. Were they truly the best team in the NFC or the NFL? And I'm sure they had questions about themselves. This was the first time that this group, with Joe Gibbs as a head coach, had been in the cauldron of the NFL playoffs. Luckily for them, however, they had John Riggins and they had the Hogs. For those of you that may not know, John Riggins was their running back or fullback, and the Hogs were their offensive line. That was the nickname they were given. And before their first playoff game against the Lions, Riggins went into Joe Gibbs' office and he said, "I want the ball." Joe Gibbs, of course, obliged. Riggins got 25 carries in that game, 119 yards, spearheaded their victory. They ended up blowing the Lions out 31-7. That moved them to the next round where they played the Vikings. And before that game, the Vikings defense had been saying things through the media about the Hogs and how they were going to butcher them, just like you butcher a hog or butcher a pig. Very clever, I know. The Redskins didn't take very kindly to that. First play of the game, they called an inside run, 40 gut. That's what they called it. Next play, 50 gut. Then back to 40 gut. Then back to 50 gut. Once again, they ran the ball down their opponent's throats. And on the strength of that run game and John Riggins, who carried the ball 37 times for 185 yards, they went on to beat the Vikings. That brought them to the NFC Championship game against the Cowboys. Now, back at this time, the Cowboys were the team that everyone in the NFC hated. This wasn't like the way things are now, where the Cowboys haven't reached an NFC Championship game in 30 years. The NFC Championship game was a birthright for Dallas. And any team in the NFC who wanted to get to the Super Bowl pretty much had to go through them. So how did the Skins plan to go through Dallas? Once again, they hung their hat on Riggins and the Hogs. First 2 plays, they again ran it inside, set the tone, scoring a touchdown on their first drive. Riggins carried the ball 36 times, picked up another 140 yards, scored 2 touchdowns. Washington would go on to win the game 31-17. And to add insult to injury, at the end of the game as they were trying to run the clock out, they ran the same play over and over and over again. In fact, to hear Joe Theismann tell it, Joe Gibbs would send in a play. It was an outside run, and left guard Russ Grimm was like, "No, I want 50 gut, and we're going to run it right at Randy White, who was the premier defensive tackle at the time." So they called the play. Gibbs kept sending in outside runs. Redskins kept changing the play in the huddle. They ran 40 gut or 50 gut inside runs on, I believe, their last 9 plays. It was just they were going after the Cowboys. Russ Grimm started to talk trash to Randy White, saying, "Hey, Randy, we're coming right at you." And there was nothing the Cowboys could do to stop it or the clock. The Redskins put an exclamation point on the win, and they were headed to the Super Bowl. Now, in that Super Bowl, they played Don Shula's Dolphins, and with about 10 minutes left in the fourth quarter, they trailed by 4 points. It was a 17-13 game. They had the ball at the Dolphins' 43-yard line, 4th and 1, and they had a decision to make. Now, this was not the NFL that we have today, where teams will go for it on 4th down, left and right. But this was a pivotal moment in the game, obviously. And according to Joe Theismann, he felt that they had to go for it. This is who they were as a team. They were the Washington Redskins. They were the Hogs. They were John Riggins. They had to be able to run the ball and get 1 yard. And they ended up doing more than that. The play call was 70 chip. Riggins took the ball off the left tackle, and not only would he break through the line and get the first down, he ran it all the way in for a 43-yard touchdown. The Redskins would go on to get a stop. They'd add another touchdown, win the game 27-17, and get the first of Joe Gibbs' 3 Lombardi trophies. So why do I tell you this story? It's because there is not a better example that I can think of a team having an identity and leaning on it to win a championship. They leaned on Riggins and the Hogs in every possible scenario. They did it to get themselves off the ground in the beginning of the playoffs. They did it to set the tone against the Vikings. They did it to close out the Cowboys. Along the way, they did it to sustain their offense in each of those games. And then in the most pivotal moment of the Super Bowl, they leaned on it once again. Now, identity is one of those words that's a little bit overused in the NFL universe. It's a little bit of media speak. It's kind of a fallback for a team that isn't very good. They don't do anything well, so sometimes people will say they don't have an identity. But having an identity as a team is actually very important. You saw in that example with the Redskins in 1982 how they leaned on it in so many different scenarios. It helps with in-game decision-making. It helps with your overall approach and game planning. It helps with how you're going to manipulate the game to work in your favor, to give yourself the best opportunity to win. And the teams that play to their identity, they give themselves the best chance to win more often than not. So it does matter. It matters if you are a running team or you're a spread-it-out offense or you're an aggressive blitzing team or you're a defense-first team. Just think about a scenario like this where it's 4th and 1, you're up by 4, you've got the ball around midfield. If you're an offensive team and you don't have a very good defense, you might say, we're going to go for it because we want our offense, which is our best unit, the unit that we lean on, to decide this game. We don't want our defense on the field. If you're a defense-first team, if you're a team like the Texans that has somewhat of a struggling offense, an inconsistent offense, but a completely dominant defense, you might decide in that scenario, hey, let's punt the ball away and force the other team to drive the length of the field against our number 1 ranked defense. Now, don't get me wrong. I've always been a believer that you need multiple ways to win. The championship teams do not win in just one way. They have multiple ways that they can beat you. However, having an identity helps with all those scenarios that I just mentioned. And that brings us to the Buffalo Bills. Now, this might be the best opportunity the Bills have to finally win the AFC and go to the Super Bowl. The AFC is wide open. And yes, the Bills, they're likely not going to have home field advantage or even win their division. But the Chiefs are likely out of it. The Ravens are on the fringe. They might not make the playoffs either. And if they do make it, they're sort of a compromised version of what they've been in the past. But this thing is wide open. The teams like the Patriots and Broncos that appear to be the number 1, number 2 seeds, a lot of question marks with them, inexperience. The Bills could get in, and even though they might not have a home game, this could be their playoff tournament to lose. But they're not so good that they can just get in there and turn things over to Josh Allen and just say, hey, Josh, go make a play. Yes, he is Superman at times. Yes, he is probably, if you look at the last 3 seasons, if we're doing like a rolling average thing, he's probably the best quarterback in the NFL over the last 3 seasons. Even though he's not going to win the MVP this year or not having the best season of any quarterback in the league this year, he's probably the top dog right now in the NFL. But you don't win championships just because you have a great quarterback. You need other things in place, both sides of the ball, multiple ways of winning. And having an identity, a coherent approach, certainly helps as well. Now with the Bills, you're probably thinking, hey, what's their identity? Isn't Josh Allen their identity? I think he has been, but I think this team is at their best when the run game is their identity, when they're feeding the ball to James Cook. The run game includes Josh Allen, by the way. And we're in the last 4 weeks of the season, heading into the playoffs. You're probably going to see even more design runs. But to me, the Bills are at their best. They're in the most control of the game when they are leaning on that run game. It helps their defense. It helps settle down Josh Allen. And I think they can do it. If they just stick with it, they can do it against anyone. You saw it last year in the divisional round against the Ravens. The Ravens had the number 1 rushing defense, but the Bills just stuck with it. They ended up running the ball 36 times for 150 yards, 3 touchdowns, left with a 2-point win. And you've seen it several times throughout this season. Saw it a couple weeks ago against Pittsburgh. Ran the ball 51 times. You heard T.J. Watt talking after the game about how he'd never seen a team just run the same play over and over and over and still have success with it. Maybe he wasn't aware of the 1982 Redskins when he said that, but still. To me, that's the type of team the Bills have to be. And if it doesn't work early, they can't abandon it. Look, Josh Allen's still going to make plays. You're not going to take that away from him. No matter what pass play you call, no matter how many times you run the ball, there will be opportunities for him to make plays off schedule. Games like he had against the Buccaneers a few weeks ago where he scored 6 touchdowns, or games like he had last week against the Bengals where he seemed to just put the team on his back. It's nice to have that in your quarterback, believe me. It's nice to have that. You cannot lean on that. You cannot rely on asking your quarterback to be Superman. It hasn't worked in the past for the Bills in the playoffs. And that's not a knock on Josh Allen. He's been excellent in the playoffs. Go look at his numbers. He's completed over 65% of his passes in his career in the playoffs. He's thrown for 258 yards per game. He's thrown for 25 touchdowns and just 4 interceptions. He's got a 101.7 quarterback rating. That doesn't even include how well he's run the ball. In 13 playoff games, he's got 668 rushing yards and 7 touchdowns. He's been outstanding in January. He is not the reason the Bills haven't won. He is not the reason they haven't been able to get over the hump. They've done the Superman thing. They've tried to win with him playing that way. It's not going to work for 4 straight games in January and February. They need something else. And to me, it's that running game. That running game truly is their identity, I think, should be their identity. And this week against the Patriots will be a good test because the Patriots are a very good run defense. So this will be a test to see if the Bills can establish the run and then stick with it, even on those drives and even in those moments of the game where it's not working. All right, moving right along, we've got another great game, probably the marquee game of the week. We've got the 11-2 Broncos versus the 9-3-1 Packers. As I said earlier, a potential Super Bowl preview. Both teams are good on both sides of the ball. That Broncos defense, though, has been something else. No one gets to the quarterback like they do. They lead the NFL in sacks, and they do it in a bunch of different ways. They'll blitz you and get to the quarterback. I think they have the second most sacks coming off of the blitz this season. They'll rush just 4 and still get to the quarterback. They lead the NFL in sacks on normal rushes. They also get coverage sacks. They play a ton of man coverage and have the dogs in that secondary to be able to handle just about any receiver in the league. So they have a bunch of different ways that they can get to the quarterback. But for the most part, to me, everything is about edge pressure with them. Obviously, they've got Nick Bonito and Jonathan Cooper who are having really good seasons. But they don't just align with 4 down like the Texans do and let those edge rushers eat. They do a lot of things to make it so that the offense cannot help out their tackles. So they'll often align with double A gap pressure looks where they put linebackers up in the A gaps on both sides of the center. Very often what that will do is lead to the offense putting the running back up in the A gap to take one of those linebackers. And if they're only going to use a 6-man protection, what that leads to is one-on-ones off the edge where there's nobody helping against Bonito or Cooper. There's nobody chipping. And you've seen a ton of sacks where the Broncos will again, put those linebackers up in the A gaps and then have them bail at the snap. And now you do get a 4-man rush, but there's no one to help chip Bonito or chip Cooper off the edge. And then they get home to the quarterback. So that'll be the thing to watch in this game. How do the Packers handle that? I don't think their tackles can handle those 2 pass rushers on their own. So it's going to be a question of, do you run the ball? Well, Broncos are a very good run defense as well. They're number 1 in the NFL in rushing yards per attempt allowed. Another option would be to keep more players in. So you bring a running back up behind the center, let him help out on those double A gap looks, and then you leave a tight end in to chip off the edge. But still, it's not easy. And then if you're sacrificing receivers who are going out into routes, it makes it more difficult for your receivers to get open. The Broncos are very good in man coverage, so not that they need any help, but if you're leaving 7 guys in to protect all the time, and you've only got 3 guys going out in the routes, not only is Patrick Surtain going to be able to handle whatever receiver he's covering, but they're going to be extra help defenders to give him help or to push to the rest of the offense. So this is a chess match that I'm really looking forward to seeing. Jordan Love and Matt LaFleur have been in sync the last couple of weeks, doing a great job in both the play design and the play execution. But we've seen this before with the Packers where they have a nice little stretch. They take 1 step forward, and then they end up taking 2 steps back. So we'll see if they can keep this going because this is going to be a tough challenge for them. But to me, they're going to be in this game. They can run their entire offense. They can try to continue to play with balance, run the ball, and take shots downfield. I don't think the Broncos on offense are going to be able to run away with the game. The Packers' defense is obviously very good. So this might be the regular season game that I'm the most excited to see. Speaking of great defense, we need to talk about the Houston Texans again. They did an absolute number on the Kansas City Chiefs last week. All but ended their season, ended their chances of making the playoffs. I mean, technically they still are mathematically alive, but the Chiefs are 6-7, and they need a lot of help. Even if they won all 4 of their remaining games, they would still need a lot of help from the rest of the AFC. And in a game where they needed it, the Texans held them to 10 points, which is really impressive. And even though they're not a team and they're not a defense that does a lot from a scheme standpoint, as I was saying last week, there were a lot of different reasons why they had success against the Chiefs. Pressure, obviously number one. I believe they pressured Mahomes on 50% of his dropbacks. They only got 2 sacks, but they were pretty regularly getting near him. And of course, if you're the Chiefs, I mean, it didn't help to have both of their tackles out, Trey Smith, right guard, out, and then you lose your left tackle, Wanya Morris, your backup left tackle on the first play of the game. Down 4 key O-linemen is no way to go through life as a quarterback in the NFL. But again, it wasn't just a pressure, and I'll encourage you to go visit footballfilmroom.com. I did a breakdown on what the Texans did to the Chiefs. Their coverage was excellent on Sunday night. It wasn't just that they were playing man-to-man and locking down receivers. There were a bunch of different situations and scenarios where the Chiefs would present trips, bunch looks, or other complex looks to kind of make things difficult for the Texans. They'd introduce different motions, different route combinations, play concepts. The Texans were ready for all of them. There were several plays where they were playing man coverage against trips, bunch looks, and they did a great job of just handling the routes, sorting out the routes, no busted coverages. And that was as big of a reason for the Chiefs' struggles as anything. Now, on the other side of the coin, I will say the Chiefs had some opportunities. There was one play early in the game where Mahomes, he had, I believe it was Hollywood Brown on a deep over route, but instead of looking at him, he thought he saw a defender jump off sides and was looking to both sidelines for flags. Didn't end up getting one, but had he just read the play out and looked at his number one receiver on the play, he would have had a big play. Instead, he held the ball, couldn't get it out on time, ended up getting sacked. Obviously, we know about the drops, the interception on the throw to Travis Kelce to pretty much end the game. I think that's on everyone's minds, but the Chiefs' first third down of the game, they dropped the pass. Tyquan Thornton dropped a deep ball that would have been a touchdown, had his hands on it, just couldn't stay tough through contact. Rashee Rice dropped a 4th down pass. Kareem Hunt dropped a 3rd down pass. Just it really is the story of the Chiefs season, just a lot of missed opportunities. They had a chance. This was a winnable game. This is the type of game that they pulled out in the past, and they couldn't connect. I can't explain drops. I can't explain why this year they're dropping passes in key moments, and in years past maybe they didn't. Either way, I'm not a Chiefs fan, but it's unfortunate that they're not going to make the playoffs. I would like to see a team like that's made it to what? 7 straight AFC championship games. They've owned the AFC. They've been to 3 straight Super Bowls. It just doesn't seem right that they're not going to have a chance to get to the playoffs and give someone else the opportunity to knock them off. Seems wrong that they're not going to make the tournament, but it is what it is. And the last topic I want to discuss is Aaron Rodgers and that Steelers offense, that Steelers passing game that had gone 6 weeks without completing one pass, 20 air yards or more, heading into Week 14 against Baltimore, and then they completed 4 of them against the Ravens, and that was instrumental in their ability to come out with the win. Aaron Rodgers in this game, look, the throws he made were unbelievable throws. They were so deadly accurate. Looked very much what you would see in every game during his prime. I mean, the most unbelievable thing about Rodgers in his prime was that he would make 5 or 6 throws a game that kind of looked routine, but you'd go back and look at them on film and be like, holy like it was uncanny how he would do that in his prime. And the other day against the Ravens, he had several of those throws. Now, I don't think this means that the Steelers' passing game or their offense is quite out of the woods yet. This was a very unique situation to me because, 1, the Ravens did not have a very good pass rush. 2, they kept giving him one-on-one opportunities. And Aaron Rodgers is going to take those when you give them to him. And when he's feeling good and can put the ball where he wants to, he's going to be able to connect on those. The problem is that passing game, it's not really complex. They don't really work the middle of the field. It really is just ISOs on the outside when they have them, screens, smoke, some checkdowns, getting the ball out of Rodgers' hands quickly in the quick passing game. Right now, he is not willing to hang in the pocket to let routes develop and push the ball downfield. And I think that's a product of a couple things. I think that's a product of him being 42 and not wanting to take a bunch of huge hits. And to work those concepts in the middle of the field, that means you've got to sit in the pocket, you've got to read the safeties, you've got to look for help defenders, make sure that they're taken out of the play, and then you're sometimes getting to your second or third option. Again, it requires time sitting in the pocket to do that. Sometimes you're going to have to take a hit after you throw, and I don't think, one, he's willing to do that. Two, I don't think he trusts that offensive line, and with good reason. When they do attempt to throw the ball downfield, the offensive line often doesn't really hold out well. You saw it in the Bills game where they tried to take a shot at the beginning of the second half, and Joey Bosa just blasted Rodgers. Ended up with a big cut on his nose. 2 cuts on his nose, I think. And that lack of trust, that lack of willingness to hang in the pocket, it's reflected in the Steelers' numbers on 3rd and long. On 3rd and long, so 3rd and 7 or more yards, the Steelers are 28th in the NFL converting. Specifically on 3rd and 7 and 9, they are dead last in the NFL. And I think so often you've seen Rodgers he'll drop back. If he doesn't have a quick ISO route where he can get rid of the ball at the top of his drop, he looks to instantly check it down. He doesn't let routes develop. I think he's uncomfortable hanging in the pocket right now. And on Sunday against the Ravens, despite how well he played, there were 2 3rd and longs, one where he missed a touchdown because he checked an ISO route, wasn't available, and then didn't work the rest of the concept where he had an open receiver for a touchdown. He had no pressure, and he ended up fleeing the pocket on that play. And then he did another one, a 3rd and 11, where he had a choice, an ISO route to the backside, had a sail concept to the right, didn't even give the sail concept a chance to develop, but it was open, and he just checked it down. Steelers picked up 5 or 6 yards, ended up punting. If he can't get rid of the ball at the top of his drop and get it out quickly, he's not going to push the ball downfield. So really that leaves 2 things. You have the ISO routes on the outside, or you have, if Rodgers is feeling healthy, his ability to move around in the pocket, buy time, and make some second reaction plays. He had that ability on Sunday against the Ravens. He doesn't have that every week. He talked about it in his press conference this week too, how just at his age, sometimes you wake up and you don't feel good and there's no reason why, and then other days you do feel good. So I think one concern I have with the Steelers' offense is that Rodgers is not going to have that mobility in every single game moving forward, 4 regular season games and potentially however many playoff games they would have if they made it. He's not going to have that mobility every week, and I think you're not going to see teams give him those ISO routes on the outside. They're going to play 2 shell. They're going to take away those routes. They're going to force him to work the middle of the field or just check it down underneath every single time and take their chances coming up and tackling or stopping the run game. But who knows? Maybe they've been saving it for the end of the season. Maybe this is Rodgers' last gasp. Maybe we'll see him start to work the middle of the field like he used to and hang in the pocket and take hits. I think it'd be fun to see the Steelers make a run. The Super Bowl's in San Francisco. Rodgers has a lot of connections to San Francisco in terms of that being his favorite team in his childhood, the team he wanted to draft him, the team that's just plagued him during the playoffs throughout his NFL career. It'd be a great fitting ending. I don't think it's very likely, but if I was an NFL scriptwriter, that would be a good ending to the season. That's it for today's show. Thank you all for listening. As always, be sure to check out footballfilmroom.com. Would love it if you subscribed, but you can also get a lot of content on there for free. Please be sure to rate and review this podcast wherever you listen. Excited for another great weekend of football, and excited to talk to you all about it next week. Have a good one. Talk to you next time.